Hello and welcome to Dose of Deborah, Rehab for the Heart. I'm your host, Dr. Deb Howell. Today, my guest is Dr. James Miles. And Dr. James Miles is a chief strategist at Lodestone R3 in Chicago, Illinois. His current projects focus on promoting personal and operational resilience within the context of community well-being, public health, cross-cultural initiatives, leadership, suicide prevention, and community economic development. He works with first responders, U.S. military, faith-based leaders, government officials, regional public health departments, and local community institutions to design and implement community engagement, regional management systems, public policy campaigns, well-being programs, and participatory research strategies that promote marketplace efficiencies, social equity, trauma-informed services, organizational performance, and the design coordination of regional services delivery campaigns. Okay. Dr. Miles provides nonprofit leadership training and development through the University of Chicago's Accelerator Program and moral injury training for military veterans through DePaul University's Egan Center. Welcome, Dr. Miles.
Well, glad to be here.
Woo! Oh my God.
That's like a whole lot. I don't think about it all at once.
Wow. So, goodness, you have done and are doing quite a bit in the community, and what looks like has been a very broad service on many different subject matters. So let me just start by saying thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time and your expertise and experience, because today's subject, I thought you would be great to provide a perspective, and it is on having deeper conversations, having more heart-centered, truthful conversations, especially when the issues are politically or racially charged, in a sense. I'll use the word charged because there's emotion with it. There are beliefs that are just held so deeply. And, to begin this conversation with people that we don't know is one thing. But then what I wanted to address, which is affecting me personally, is when we want to have conversations with people who are close to us, our families. And I'll share with you a bit about that for myself. And, but I believe that people will be interested in this conversation, first of all, as it's relevant to these times. And how we move forward is going to be dependent on these conversations. So with all that being said, I'm curious what your thoughts are just with that opening, because I believe you have some experience with this kind of, highly charged feelings, unrest,
So, I'll start by being completely transparent. I can so phenomenally mess it up that it really keeps you humble and honest when you talk about highly charged situations where you have a personal vested interest, desire in seeing a particular outcome. And by me starting with that kind of honest statement, it leads to the notion that it's really about loving yourself, no matter what you feel the actual outcome is compared to what you wanted, and then giving grace to the other person as well. And just kind of starting there alone, It gives us room to kind of set realistic, and I say that with a soft R, to be a little more willing to accept outcomes that are different than what we might want or expect. Just that alone goes such a long ways towards being able to survive that moment and allowing room for maybe a better moment to come at some point. And allowing that, our loved one, friend, someone we care about, allowing them to be where they are, while also allowing you to be where you are, not as a prerequisite of whether I love or care about you, but maybe as a measurement of how much and how deep we can go right now. And that's kind of a big starting point for me.
So we're talking about the context, the
Yes.
the framework, and to have a framework that says, okay, we can agree to disagree in a sense,
Yes.
and that we give each other room to have our respective opinions and beliefs. And the thing, though, that I think is challenging is to get true buy-in, because it takes two parties to work this, right? To listen. So one party can be, yes, let's lay this groundwork, and but then when things start to I wouldn't say unravel, but when things start to kind of get a little bit heated and passionate, and
Yeah.
where beliefs feel challenged, and here's why I say this, because there's one way to be in a group setting where we have people that we don't know, right? That the expectation is we're going to look to resolve something, or at least dialogue, engage in dialogue.
Yeah.
And that requires us to listen. But then when we have family members, so when you have family member, now we're talking about people who it's already, they know you, right? They know you, and it's already a fine line. There's already a fine line. And to maintain relationship with family members when there are truly different beliefs, especially as one becomes an adult, and I'm referring to myself, and I'll share that in a bit about my parents and how our political beliefs are different, and what I was raised to believe, and as far as in religion, and those practices have changed for me also as an adult.
Yeah.
And so I respect my parents for where they are with what they believe and how they've lived their life. But I truly want to have an honest conversation about what's going on now, because these times are unlike any time when everything is up. Every single issue on civil rights, human rights, women's rights,
Yeah.
racial, everything. I mean, and
It's a
so,
very unique time.
you know what I'm saying? So there's so
Yeah.
much to be said, and to avoid conversation, it keeps an underlying tension that's not spoken, so we don't have bad feelings, or we don't
Yeah.
enter this hot water or this minefield. But that's
Can I
with
ask a
family, and
question?
then right, so
Yeah. Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So why is it why is it important to you to be able to have your parents be at a certain place in that discussion with you?
Well, it's not to be. I would like my parents to be open to have a discussion, not
But
to be
why?
open to have. Why? Because I feel that I'm an adult, and so I'm from the era children are seen and not heard. Right? That's my era. Okay.
Yes, got it. Yeah,
So I'm a big girl now.
me too.
All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's what's
And
important is being seen and heard by them.
yes, I'd like to be seen and heard by them, and I would like to have an adult conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Truly, because in these times, it feels like I can still be the child, right?
Yeah.
And the parent remains the parent. And so there's this, you know, hierarchy, and I respect my parents. But there was a point in time when a conversation was had, and it ended up with hurt feelings. And
Yeah.
so since then, it's like I'm just gonna not have these conversations. And even my kids want to have conversations that are real and true and honest and open and vulnerable. And again, it's a cultural thing. It's that way of growing up was not. I know that my parents did not grow up that way,
Yeah.
right? And so the dynamics involved in setting up um, this safe space. Let me
Yeah.
say safe space
Yeah.
to
You know,
hear
we
each other. It's important to me because this is what I do as a health professional. I do this as a health professional, and I do this with strangers. Yet the people closest to me,
yeah.
you see that, and I've listened to other people out online too, like actually put complete distance between themselves and their family member because of beliefs, and they make that choice that they want to. This is they're not going to change a family member. They don't, you know, condone behavior. They love the person, but they are going to keep physical distance, and they're going to keep their children at a distance also because they don't want that influence. So I'm watching what's going on out there as well. So for me, my kids are adults now, but the conversation still has yet to honestly be had. Um, but I did start it, and that's why I wanted to know
I
what
tell you,
perspective you could offer.
you're making me think about a project we worked on in Virginia, and this would have been around the Rodney King um, kind of whole upheaval, and so what we came to realize was that some of the parents, adult children, grandchildren, younger children, there was like a lot of disagreement about what is the best approach and who says what. And one of the things we came to was that some of the older adults came up in a time when you didn't question authority. Their whole idea was, we got to teach our kids, don't question authority, because in the space you come from, if you question authority, you died. That just sure enough. And unfortunately, that time, authority wasn't just age, it was racial stuff. If you just questioned someone's view, whom society felt um, had more right to their view than you, then we had to teach you not to question authority, and then therefore we're doing right. So then the next thing was then it became later where if you don't learn to question authority, you die. If you don't learn how to have critical thinking, if you don't learn how to really assess what's going on, still respectfully, but assess it versus kind of just blind leadership. And then if that was kind of moving towards, out of the boomers into what is it, Gen X, Gen Z, etc. And the notion that there is a whole nother movement that says leadership is not necessarily hierarchical. It could be just the group and what we come to. And so what we found though back then was the fact that those ideas were clashing within family units. And while everybody was in their own ways fighting for what they felt was best, um, they weren't able to see each other's value proposition because it was coming from different um, theoretical moorings. One, if both of them, we want to live, but one is that if you question, you die, the other if you don't. So how do you have a conversation that bridges that? And in some cases, some people are where they are, and they're gonna be there, and it's a matter of loving them where they are, and depending on your station and your nature of it, as a grown woman with your own children and parents, obviously you have different levels of freedom. It doesn't address the heart challenge, but different levels of freedom. And I asked the question, why was it important? We found when we were able to get to what was really important to us, then we find, so for example, if I could put myself in your position, if you'd allow me to do that, then really the politics of the time would be less important. And what was more important was that maybe you've never really listened to me all along. And, we need to kind of work through that one. There might be some other topics where that could be worked on. And then this political piece um, can be where it is, because then you're not going to come over. I'm not going to change. If I've come to a strong belief in something, I'm not going to change that. That doesn't mean that I have to try to make you take it on. But to the degree to which we can agree, maybe the business is a little less dynamic, So it was a funny little situation that happened. Um, this was some time ago, but I was operating in a clergy mode, and I was doing a funeral, and it was a family funeral. So that was unusual for me because I lived away from my family during those days. So my mother can be has very strong, can have domineering type thoughts and feelings, and the ways she thinks something should go and has no problems with So I'm the officiant. This is a funeral, and I'm about to walk the family in, which also is my family. Kind of, so they're used to, their families call me Jimmy. So, I wasn't James to them. I wasn't the Reverend Dr. Miles. And so she kept wanting to bring all these people over who hadn't seen me, and I'm trying to get my head ready to usher us through this experience. And finally, I just turned her and said, stop. Stop. I love you, but stop. We can do all this later. She wasn't used to that. I kind of shook her a little bit. But at that point, I also had a job to do. It didn't matter what she thought. I tried to let her know that it wasn't anything less loving. Now that was a peaceful moment. We had we've had, I guess, not so peaceful moments where we had to learn that everybody's growing up, um, and she and I had to have moments where we had to decide we were going to see each other. That South African term sawubona that says we see you, or we see you, and it really means, it's this interesting that even though I'm the one saying it, I say it in a we as representative of this whole lineage. And then the statement back is like, oh yes, and we see you too. In some of these discussions, we really don't see each other. We see the struggle. And so that question becomes really key for me. If I can unpack, if using kind of everyday terms, what kind of dog do I have in the fight? What is the real issue for me? Then I can better withstand not getting that in this moment, but being clear what healthy boundaries are. And that's an interesting dance.
Yeah. So dance, yes. And so I actually started this conversation with my father
Yeah.
to say, there's a lot going on, and I'm just curious. I'm curious what you think about the things happening. And so as he shared information, I was like, wow, this is this is interesting. So, and then I wanted to know why he thought what he thought, not just what he thought, but I wanted to understand, like, what is it that has you thinking this
How'd
way?
you get there?
How do you get there? How do you get to that
Yeah.
belief? And that's where things become more of a defensive, like, this is right. So these are the tools. These are the tools, because unless we learn different, we just guard against the belief that we
Yeah.
have, right?
Yeah.
This is it. And so then what I've learned is to see if I can tease out what's fact and what's feeling, and so the context in which I was looking to have this discussion was to say, not being political, right? This is not about, any party lines. This is about people. This is about, what do you believe in your heart, right? This is not about tearing people down, whoever's in office. It's about the values that we have, and where do we see that these values are playing out. And so if people are watching certain channels, getting their information, and there's bias, because if you're the channels, have different things that are being promoted. And I know that when I was on jury duty, well, let me tell you, I was on jury duty 9 weeks.
Wow.
9 weeks. And what I learned from jury duty was that we learn a lot of stuff that is incorrect from media.
Yeah.
We don't even know the stuff that we just kind of vicariously believe because of just what we
Yeah.
see. Um, and then when it came down to this facts, fact finding thing, it was an awakening for me. Truly, I was like, wow. And that's how I practice. I don't bring up politics or religion or anything like that with patients, but if they should bring something up with me, my hope is to hear what people have to say, and to be curious, and also to see if it's not a belief that I have, right? That it's not something that I believed, but I don't want to shut down what people are believing, because my purpose when I'm working with people is to help them get to uh, improve their own health and their functionality. So my goal is for them to feel better, right? To get stronger, to get well. So to set up a situation where it's all of a sudden my beliefs come in as a barrier to them trusting me, or wanting to further listen to me or anything like that, so it's important that I am mindful in the kind of conversations that I'm having, that I can honor where people are in their belief, and I'm not going to set them up to like defend their belief, but also and it's a dance, is to open a window of possibility for considering something different, considering
Yeah.
another viewpoint based on fact, not feeling, based on facts, because we have to differentiate between what is fact, because fact and feeling, like, they're not the same. And if people want to stay in their being right versus being real, right? These are two different lanes. And and so it's this constant mindfulness for myself to want to stay true to the dialogue, the communication, the exchange of information and beliefs, versus, right? And it is a dance. It really is a dance.
There's something that comes up. So when I was doing my master's work, and so it was around theology, and we looked at how people used their sacred writings for and against each other. And we would go into Egypt and Israel, on an annual basis. We would go through Rome, and we would do work across the United States during the school season, and then on the summers we go over to Egypt and Israel. So we had this idea came up, and I heard a professor later call a similar concept called crossing over to go home. And what it would be is that when I would come in, now this was around religious kind of distinctions, where didn't matter, different religions, different views. You could be the same religion, but different ways of practicing. So the idea was that before I judge what you're doing, what you're saying, let me try to understand what it means to you. So we would cross over into that person's space, theoretically, sometimes physically, literally, like speaking with Bedouins out in 100-something degree heat in the desert. We would go out in the notion of, let's understand what that means. So one of the examples we would use when we would try to do the training was, imagine you're going out, and these are mostly Christian groups, sometimes going into non-Christian spaces. So imagine you're going out and you see two people down at a river worshiping at a tree. And the question is, how can you tell, and they both look like they're doing almost the same thing. How can you tell which one sees the tree as God and which one sees God in the tree? That was in that application. In some cases, you can't unless you talk to them and really get it. Then once you understand what these things mean, then come back into your own worldview and what are similar meanings. At that point, it wasn't until that point now that then you're ready to have dialogue, because otherwise you're going to try to come at them with, almost saying, you should be doing it my way. And then sometimes our natural reaction is to become defensive and frustrated because we a lot of times don't know how to really share or explain what we believe. And sometimes it's so fear-based, or it's anchored in stuff that we may not even be in touch with. And as we know from kind of heart-focused training, those neural nets can be wired a certain way that all of a sudden you're reacting and don't even know why. And so just the ideal of the question of why do you believe that and think that could bring up a defense response that then can set off a cascading piece that's so far off. So we would do that crossing over to figure out what does this really mean to you. Then would come back. Now, if the person wasn't really, wasn't really quote unquote down for all that conversation, they were like, okay, thank you. Amen. God bless, we move on. But the idea, because there has to be that willingness, but still, can we do it in a way that still leaves some dignity and respect for them? Because what we found is that in some cases, those who were a little shy, a little off-putting, come on, we got these strange people rolling up in here, what's that all about? That later on, once they kind of got to see us around a bit, or maybe the next year, they're like, hey, now we have a conversation. And you learn all kinds of stuff. And nobody's changing religion. You do you, I'm doing me. But all of a sudden, man, they just start, like, by year number 3, it was like meeting a walking encyclopedia. They're just rolling out information. And, you know, we learned that. So the doing that in family is a little tougher because we know each other. And how do we allow space? As I started out, when I catch myself not being able to do it, then I know I need to kind of step back, challenge myself to not so much change to fit, but at least accept that, okay, we're at some type of space here, maybe myself or them or some combination, we're holding on to a goal that's actually not spoken. And all these other things are just proxy, you know, like um, I went to a military school, and some of my colleagues are just very, very staunch conservative in this current administration, very Trump supporters. And we had a strong, you know, a couple of discussions. And I just finally said that if you want to really talk, we can talk. If you just want to, you know, share your talking points on the political platform, that's not a conversation. And I had to just tell them that was not the best use of our time. And most likely, if we're going to have a relationship ongoing, then we won't. I have a guy who keeps sending me all these images of just the worst depictions of African Americans in any situation. And he says, I'm concerned about what the media is saying. I said, well, maybe you need to change your media source. And so it's at the point now where I didn't, and he sensed up the face. I don't shut him off. I haven't, what do you call it, blocked him, but neither do I engage it. It's real clear that whatever his agenda is, I leave him with it. Now, when it comes to family and, you know, holidays and birthdays, was a little bit more challenging. And I have a family member who I said to my mother that, you know, I can't let this person keep pushing my buttons. And so love them, we'll keep loving them, but I know them just like they know me. And I'm very open to new developments, but so long as we're holding on to that cycle, then I challenge myself to release it, but let them be where they're going to be. I don't try to get them to be someplace else. And they get there's some benefit. You know, we talk about secondary benefit. There's something about keeping mess going for some people.
Yeah.
So I think not to participate.
Yeah, yeah, and so family and friends, because I also had a conversation with a friend that I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. Had no idea, like in the deeper belief that was not in, like, I was like, who? I didn't even know who was the same person that I knew.
Yeah.
It was like that kind of conversation, because I know this person to be caring. You know, I know this person to be, you know, choosing to be more heart-centered and more, you know, like evolving, trying to like learn things, and yet the belief to me was incongruent. Like the belief and the value and the perspective that this person had, actually it's more, actually so it's more than one person. So and for me it's still all about what's going on in me, because this is, I got to take ownership of what is this doing for me in knowing that I care about these people. You know, I've known them for years, like,
Right.
you know, one gal like over 20 years, and another one, you know, well over 10 years, and this time like I'm saying, all these issues are up for review and discussion and healing, is that when people take a perspective, and the perspective is their perspective, and I think a big part of this is that when you are not directly in touch with that perspective, like if that issue has not directly affected you,
Yeah.
it doesn't impact you the same. And that's the way I kind of try to open that window, is that what direct experience do you have with this issue
Yeah.
that could give you a different way to look at it.
Yeah.
And on issues, on very, like, deep issues on rights, women's rights, like, and gay rights, and black rights, and human rights. And we're talking about humanity. We're talking about pain. We're talking about when people hurt and other people are like, it's not all that. I'm like, it's not all that to you because you have not directly
Yeah.
had some exposure, right?
Yeah.
You haven't been stuck. Hello. And I think that's a perspective that when I have these conversations, is that that's a question that I pose to, here's a fact, here's a feeling. And
Yeah.
your feeling is based on your experience, your personal direct experience. Because if you had a different experience, right, it could prove that you would have a different perspective after that experience,
Yeah.
right? And that's kind of how I, even with having the conversation with my friends, but it still left me feeling, wow, like, it's important for me to dialogue, not
Yeah.
to each other stay in respective corners and arms, this kind of thing. This is how I believe, and you're not going to change my mind, because I'm not here to change your mind, and I'm not looking for people to change my mind, but I'm looking to have meaningful and real conversations. And when I see people more concerned with just being right and staying in a belief, and it to me, it is constricting. It is part of why we recycle pain,
Yeah.
first of all, especially when it comes to generational pain, because the same conversation takes place, and we're not looking to open that little window and say, well, let's look at it through this lens, you
Yeah.
know, because the pain and that level of vulnerability, you have to be willing to go there. You have to be willing to drop into that space where maybe
That's that
space.
intimacy kind of bubble.
Mhm.
Uh, that's that intimacy kind of bubble, that space where we really connect on a more intimate level, more caring level. It's something that I really am connecting with in what you're sharing, is the fact that you care. If you didn't care, then none of this discussion would even take place. The fact that you care, and you care enough to really want the connection, all these other pieces kind of, this is just, I'm just saying what I think I'm hearing and feeling. And if that's accurate, I'm really loving that, the fact that it's really more about you caring, and because you care, when that expectation um, of the exchange being a little bit more understanding, listening, mutually respectful, when it doesn't rise to the level of what you see in your heart, then that doesn't feel good. I know it doesn't for me. And then I realized, when I can realize that I actually really care, I was like, okay, you're a knucklehead to me right now, but I really care about you. Then the question is, how can I challenge myself to embrace the care and release the person. So, because otherwise, the tempers and all that other stuff comes out. I can be a mess. So I love that I'm hearing the care. I love that I'm hearing this desire for sharing, caring, more intimate connection, and where is the we in all of this? Not just your belief and my belief. And that's also where our own soul work is so key. And I know the better my soul work is that day or that moment, the better I can handle that. the the more I gloss over my soul work, the more those moments is like a bumpy road or a pitfall. And then, then I find myself like, how did you get here? And then that person's still where they are. So I love that caring dynamic and this notion of how we can nurture that while giving each other space. And unfortunately, in some of the more challenging moments, it really might mean physical space, because sometimes either ourselves or someone else is not satisfied with anything short of absolute agreement or endorsement versus mutual understanding and respect for each other's views that may be different than my own.
Right. And what I know is that there can be unconscious associations to things
Yes.
that gate that that guardrail is going to be up,
Yeah.
and anything that and again, this often is unconscious, right? Where are we willing to go in and feel the uncomfortableness, to reckon with the belief that maybe that if we change this belief, the whole narrative of our life changes.
This
You
is
see? So I get it. I get why people can be hesitant, avoiding, like resistant to having these deeper conversations, because they're not conscious, first of all, of what's in the way.
yeah.
And on a level, when we work with the nervous system and dealing with trauma, this is on a level that we are surviving, that we stay in a survival mode, and we can live our life and end our life and not resolve these things. And but the curious nature, I'm curious to know what people feel and what their body language says. And these conversations, you know, are really interesting when the body is acting a certain way. And I'll give an example real quick that just came to me about a gal who, well, I want to think she was like in her early 80s or like 80, and she had just had a surgery.
Yeah.
And she says to me, I was in the parallel bars with her, which is a lot of my moments are in the, in the parallel. That's like my ministry right there, in the parallel bars. And she said to me, she goes, aging sucks. I was like, why would you say that? She goes, it does. And then she said, she went into this, I used to, and all this, and I said, well, what do you like to do now? And she says, well, nothing. No, it doesn't matter. I said, it doesn't matter to who? She goes, well, people don't care. I don't care about what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I kind of
Yeah.
pressed her on it. And she says, first of all, she used to write poetry
Mm.
and draw. She used to, like, she's an artist, but she stopped all that. And I said, why did you stop? She goes, because nobody cared, no one appreciated it. I said, well, sounds to me like you stopped appreciating your own work. So, and I said, I want you to bring it in. I want to see what you've done. Well, I'm thinking she's done a few things. No, because I only had twice to work with this lady, and she brings in 2,000 right poems. She wrote 2,000 poems. I thought, oh my word. And then she talked to me about right, and they're beautiful. And then I was reading some of them, and I could see where she was talking about her She was a businesswoman. She's a very successful businesswoman, and
uh,
attractive, and as a woman, she just was really owning herself. And as this person who's aging and having aches and pains and like not the same attention, not all that, it was not okay. But the other piece was that she was restless. She didn't. There was a restlessness about it, about her nights, especially, where she didn't sleep well. And out of the blue, after I'd taken her back to her room, she just said something to me, random. And she goes, she says, I wonder. And she says, my dad told me that people believe, need to believe that there's a God.
mm,
And I
okay.
said, okay. And I said, well, how old were you when you are recalling? She said she's like about 4. And I said, well, do you believe that? And she goes, I don't know. And it turns out that it was from the time of the Holocaust, right? So
Um,
all his family, her family, and but her dad's basically were all murdered. And so this was her, and she and her dad had a close relationship. But here's the thing, is that she's wrestling, and this a random thought comes up, like random, okay? Because I asked her a question about her restlessness
okay.
at night. She's restless,
Mm-hmm.
and this came up. So she's wrestling with something, and it's a belief.
Yeah.
And if you change this belief, because I asked her, I said, would it change how you feel about your dad? Do you feel like you'd be dishonoring your father if you had your own belief? You know, and I have these kind of conversations somehow weave into my sessions in therapy based on
Part of your calling.
but here's what I'm saying, is that we are not conscious about, so why can we not like access those spaces within ourselves when we are trying to have an honest conversation, and we don't even recognize that we just have this closed off. It's no entrance here. Right? Because that's going to open up Pandora's box,
Yeah.
and they're like, I don't want to open up Pandora's box, so I'd rather stay with the belief that I know that I can, like, and staunch is a great word, because that's how my parents are, pretty staunch in their beliefs, and some of the conversations I've had with a couple of my friends are just really like staunch. And
But there's something that I think is really powerful. When the ideal of using heart-centered techniques to
mhm.
open that channel up, to open us up to our more intuitive ability, that when we can create choice points for ourselves by just that soulful spiritual pause, our physiology lines up differently. And that when we can do that, we also have an opportunity to shift the energetics of the space. And if we can shift the energetics of the space, no matter how stubborn, staunch, and just recalcitrant um, the energy of another may be, or our own before we do it, then the space can help us shift. And then that way I can't attack you. Now, I might try to take it out on you. But it's an interesting thing. And I've been challenging myself to see if I can be an architect of shifting energetic space more, which usually means then I've got to get grounded, own where I am, and therefore have less and less chance of reacting out of an unhealthy or fearful space myself, which usually shows up as control.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we realize that, and I had to work on this, is that I have to stay in my space. Right? There's this field. Like I have my own like field, and that part of that field is a loose boundary that is, I put love in this field, in this space,
Mm.
right? So as I breathe, like there's this love field that I have around me because this is how I've learned, because I can become a target literally when people are hurting. They're in pain and they're lashing out, and I basically am the closest target at the moment. And sometimes I have to be aware of, is this a real threat to my well-being, right,
Yeah.
as a practitioner, or is it something that I just need to kind of like, I'm literally like dodging, like in
Mm-hmm.
advance, but I'm dodging. But I have this field, and I'm going to breathe, and I'm just going to send like this love and compassion, because I know this person's hurting. I know that
Yeah.
this person is afraid. I know that this person has like, they don't know what their next steps are going to be, and there's a lot of question marks. So the fact that I'm there and I'm the closest thing, that if I get defensive or take it personally, which is easy to happen, especially if we're
Right.
tired, if it's been a long day, or we just, whatever it is, that
Yeah.
we have to realize that we're human too when we're interacting, and we're in a professional manner interacting with people who are volatile and having a difficult time. Is that we still want to, how can we construct this space to keep the safety there, to actually have conversation and dialogue that reflects the truth of the matter, the truth of the situation, that
Yeah.
we can help bring some resolution, that we can help bring better understanding. This is something that takes practice. This is something that takes patience, and it takes the
Big time
individual
patience.
a lot of patience. That's my,
Yeah.
and to understand this, and I say this one last thing, as it comes to me, I love meeting people where they are, and the word love has attachments to lived experiences. And I remember saying something to someone about love, and this patient lady was like, love, and she was like, she like, it just,
Right. Right.
because it brought up, man, if you want to scream pain,
Right.
someone who's been betrayed, violated, blah 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 blah, you just name it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, it we have to be I was like, whoa, it was just like, I just had to
Yeah.
like, whoo, step back, whoa, okay. So it was anger. She was angry, and whereas other people might be more sorrowful, if it's grief, or however we handle it, and
Sure. Sure.
or people will act out, like outwardly take it out on people. So the point being is that there has to be a willingness, first of all, to want to feel different, to be open to having a conversation, and the possibility exists that we're not gonna meet eye to eye, but the fact is, if we could just have an honest, like, tell me how you feel,
Yeah.
and tell me, why do you feel that way, like, and because we are not used to questioning and having that inquiry, that non-judgmental, non-critical inquiry, self-inquiry to begin with, let alone having it with other people.
I think and having it with myself sometimes is more challenging. So in those situations, like we talk about the loved ones, the family members, it used to be that I almost always left those encounters feeling like I was the failure, or taking all the weight on. And sometimes the people that I was with, they completely obliged me by sharing all the things I didn't do right. Um, and the idea of practicing just leaving it where it is, whether I feel like I did well or not, or operated to my best heart level or not, being able to give myself grace, give them grace, and realize, okay, that didn't quite go the way I thought it would go, or not the way I want, but okay. At least I got some information. I see where we are. I know what a trigger is, and then the idea that we can, look to see if there's a better moment, and maybe I can be more discerning in that next moment. And if not, then I just have to, there are a few people that I love dearly, but because of the current climate, I have to let them be where they are. And we'll send notes and things, love you, still love you, but it's real clear I'm not going to come sit in the living room with you. Because in one case in particular, uh, because of her age and station in life, she feels like her views are it. And those views are extremely inconsiderate of others. And that's just not good for my own heart. So at that point, I can still share love with her, and love for the roles that she played at a certain season of my life, and still own this, let her be what she is, um, and be okay. And that self introspection actually was more challenging for me to own and embrace and love that than just being able to do it around somebody else.
Exactly. And it exactly. It's because what's churning and burning in us when
Right.
we're not getting the same, we're not getting what we want. We're not, and our intention is good. And yet there's pain, because I know for me, and I don't want to say anything that I'm going to regret, like, because I see the inconsistencies. I see it, and I make it a point to be as objective as I can, because I'm a professional and that is what I do. Like, I meet all kinds of folks, and so I make it a point to have objectivity. But when it comes to like my personal life with my friends, I'm not in a professional relationship in that sense. It's we are
More peers
yeah, we're peers, or again, like if it's a parent. But at the end of the day, though, I believe that we have to decide, first of all, what's this relationship worth to us? Is it worth, like,
yeah.
sticking with not having this conversation, or having this conversation? And if the person still keeps the perspective, then how do you make that perspective, if it really is like grating on your heart, saying, man, this is like really how you believe, like really how you believe? And you go, like, really how you, like, you drop into this place of like really, 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 and it's just like, and I have a couple folks right now, and I'm like down in the really, really, what I'm like, but because I'm in my own, like, what the heck? Like, how could, it doesn't make sense to me. So, but does it need to make sense to me? Like,
And that's the powerful piece.
yeah, but when it comes to treating other people, and here's a society right now where, how are we going to move forward?
Yeah.
Right? How are we in our communities? And it's got to start with, like, the individual. We have the family, we have the community, we got the, all right. So when we're looking at this ripple, and this discussion is about the individual, and having those conversations with ourselves, what really matters, why does it matter, and what do you want from this, and how do we move forward? Because if we keep recycling this pain, we don't get true resolution. We keep putting the Band-Aid on and ripping it off, putting the Band-Aid on, ripping it off, and then meanwhile there's an abscess that is there, right? And that becomes systemic. And it's at what point, where are we accessing it to actually begin to effect real change, and to heal at that core? And these conversations are charged and they're so open, just like a wound. And initially, in order to put that, to have like a solve, like that balm to soothe this pain, we have to be willing to at least even sit with each other in the pain and saying, you know, I really don't even know what to say. And maybe there is nothing to say except to just feel that compassion um, and to just hold that space, you
When I
know?
worked in full-time ministry, we used to teach the younger or newer ministry. It had nothing to do with age, just how new were you into the process. And we taught the ministry of presence. And sometimes we just say, shut up, just shut up. Don't quote a scripture, don't sing a song, just be. And just the power of presence. And then on a personal note, a buddy would often say, if all I have is a hammer, I tend to see all problems as a nail to pound them in. And so there might be an opportunity to expand our ability to share, communicate, explore, discuss, and learn. And all that can be extremely uncomfortable because we grow up in this in a society that makes it, it's like who controls the it and the mastery and the sage from the stage, or versus how can I be with this, walk through it, and not even have all the answers. So this diverse toolkit in order to develop, even with our loved ones, is just a huge piece that's never ending. And I appreciate it more and more, not on all days, but more and more. So, but I am loving this. It's almost like we have a personal discussion. Then there's a whole nother discussion about how to walk through at community level. There's a little bit of a shift, at the community level and those dynamics. But at the core, it's some of the same stuff. I really appreciate just experiencing the amount that you care. I really,
Yeah,
really
and
do. Thank you
you
for that.
know, it's these are the things that matter to me because I want us to see that we can feel differently about things because and and it's not comfortable typically in this growth, right? But once you've been there and have had have gotten in touch, right,
Yeah,
have had the experience, then the value of it has been really, I guess, validated. Like, it's now the truth has been there. But and so, but we're all. It's not a done deal. It's not a done deal. I have to practice being nice sometimes because sometimes I just get so frustrated and irritated, and then I have to, whether shut off the television or just go lay down, go drink some water, go outside, like whatever it is, because I can tell you I can have that one person, that one experience out of 1,000, and that one experience that just was like, really, it can challenge me to my core,
yeah,
right? And I I got to work with that because, and I say that jokingly because as a therapist, I've been doing this 26 years, and I can have that one, like, and it's important to talk about conversation because, like, if my day starts with that one, and it's like, like, I had to dig roots, where's the well, where's the water, like, help me, and to stay present, to stay in a constructive way, to really be mindful and thoughtful and all the things that go along with that, and thinking, man, this is the start of my day, and I took out the rest of the day, and I need to be nice. So how do I resource myself?
yeah,
This is the challenge about even having these conversations, is that we have to realize that we are resourcing. We have to be continually resourcing.
yeah.
resourcing, and our faith is resourcing. Like, I had to drink water, I went outside. There's a bigger world, you know, where
Yeah.
when we start to feel contained and confined, and like all of a sudden all this constriction says I can't breathe, and like, you know, anxiety can kick in, and just frustration, and we're ready to like, I'm just ready to just like, you know, all right, I'm not nice now. Okay, so just
Yeah.
you know, so I'm not saying like I'm just this, you know, yeah. I love people, and love is powerful, and so love also requires that we reckon with the things that are in this space that is really raw, really vulnerable, and really, it's real. Like, it's real, and it hurts, and acknowledge that it hurts. And someone says something, and it's like, hey, you know, like, I'm gonna just acknowledge that there's pain that came from a place of pain,
Right.
and just send compassion to you, and allow compassion to move in me as well, because I'm human. I'm
Yeah.
human, and I have feelings, and I just need to take care of myself so that I can continue to take care
Yeah.
of others.
Your heart matters, just
Yeah,
like anybody else.
yeah,
Take care of your heart,
yeah,
not just take care of somebody else's.
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've been like, woof, okay. I just, you know, I so appreciate having you here to have this conversation, and we definitely have to have more conversation. We can build it out into other in in uh, in other ways, you know, and expand on it. So, but if people
Would
want to
love
get in touch with you, if people want to get in touch with you, is there a website?
Sure. So it's www.lr3inc.com. That's my company website. The company phone number is 800-977-9831. And then you can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. James L. Miles Sr.
All right, very cool. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Miles. And those of you out there listening, I am Dr. Deb Howell. You can find me on Facebook at Dr. Deb Howell, and I have the podcast, Dose of Deborah, Rehab for the Heart, also on YouTube, and I am also on LinkedIn. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and if you're wanting to have these conversations at home, you know, as well as in the community, and in your work environment, I hope this was helpful to you. So God bless everyone, and you know, take good care of yourself. All right, it starts with you. So,
Thank you.
all right.
Take care.